I'm a female, and at the time of the story, I was around 23. However, I've always looked younger than my actual age. I was traveling with my mother who at the time was 50 across the state we lived in, which was a pretty lengthy trip. And we still had roughly 5 hours until we got home, which meant driving into the night well past midnight. We decided at some point to stop at a Tim Hortons that was located directly off the freeway and grab a coffee since we were both getting super tired from driving all day. It was still light out, but the sun was starting to go down, and this Tim Hortons was literally out in the middle of nowhere. No towns nearby, no gas stations, nothing. Just a lone Tim Hortons. Since it was the only store around for miles and located right off the freeway, the drive-thru was absolutely packed. And so we both decided to go inside together to see if the line was any shorter and ordered that way. While we were inside, I sat down at a table while my mom offered to order for us. A minute later, I see an older man with gray hair walk in with a young teenage girl. She must have been maybe 13 or 14. She had blonde hair and was very small. I remember thinking that she was either a teenager or not quite in the teen years yet. The man gets in line, and the girl goes to the bathroom. The line inside is also long, so a few minutes pass, and I see the girl come out of the bathroom and rejoin the man who was still in line. I decided to go on my phone at this point because I was waiting on my mom. All of a sudden, without even ordering, this man and girl get out of line and walk directly over to me. As they're walking over, it just so happens that my mom had just finished ordering at one of the registers and walked over to me to surprise me with Timbits. My mom gets to me literally seconds before this man and girl walk up to me and my mom. I thanked my mom for the Timbits and took a bite out of one. Looking directly at me, and now standing right in front of me, this man begins telling me and my mom this big elaborate story about how he's traveling with his granddaughter and that he's some part owner of Tim Hortons, and he wanted to know how he liked our Timbits. His story was odd, and he began to give me weird vibes. After we told him we enjoyed the Timbits, he asked if he could take a photo of my mother and I with her Timbits. He claimed that whatever department he worked in at Tim Hortons was responsible for ensuring the quality of the Timbits specifically, and making sure the customers were satisfied. Coincidental, considering he walked right up to us while we were eating one, and he mentions this is part of his job. He claimed he wanted to take a photo of random customers enjoying their Timbits to show his partners later on as some sort of proof of the Timbits' satisfaction. This was weird, considering we were the only ones he took a photo of while he was there. My mom and I looked at each other for a minute, unsure what to do, and then we agreed to have her photo taken. This whole time, the teenage girl was just staring at me, not saying a word, and giving me direct eye contact the entire time, to the point that I began to feel very weird and instantly regretted allowing a stranger to take a random photo of me in a Tim Hortons out in the middle of freaking nowhere. I mean, who even does that? Creepy, right? After the photo, the man and girl get back into line for the second time. Finally, our drinks were finished. My mom and I decided to get the heck out of there because we both felt super uncomfortable. Just as we get out to the car, we see the man and the girl walking directly towards us in the parking lot and looking right at us. My mom opens our doors, and right as we sit in our seats, the man and girl suddenly walk in totally different directions as soon as we make it into the car and shut the doors, locking them. The weirdest part was that neither the girl or the man walked out with any coffee or food items, despite being in there twice. I don't know who that man or girl was, or what their intentions were. The man could have been completely innocent, telling the truth about who he was and why he wanted the photo. But the whole situation just felt off to me. I often tried to Google my situation to try and make sense of the whole situation, but could never find anything about it. My state is pretty well known for trafficking and attempts of trafficking incidents, and I hope that this incident was just another case of some weirdo nutjob who, for whatever reason, wanted a photo of two random women. I started my first job at Tim Hortons when I was 16 and worked there for many years throughout high school and university. I could probably tell you about 10 or so stories of inappropriate regulars, but this one really haunts me. I was about 17 or 18 at the time and worked at a location that was 10 minutes down the street from my parents' home. A neighbor, Alex, lived roughly 8 houses down and started coming in regularly for coffee and small talk with me. Alex was at least 45 to 50, and it turns out he used to work with my dad and has lived in my neighborhood for many years. Nothing about our conversation seemed weird or alarming to me, and after a few months of completely normal interactions, he found me on Facebook. I accepted it because I was young and had no social media boundaries at the time. This is when things started to get weird. He would DM me about things I was posting instead of commenting publicly. He would offer me rides to work or class, and would make comments about my hair, makeup, and curves. I found out that he was married and had a son a few years younger than me. I then started just ignoring his messages and eventually removed him as a friend. When he came in for his coffees after this, he would ask for my number, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. And this just generally made me feel super uncomfortable. I started asking coworkers to serve him. My manager at the time refused to ban him from the store. I also learned that he used to send past employee flowers and do the exact same things for her. Fast forward a few months, Alex seemed to have gotten the hint, and he stopped asking me when he came into my workplace. However, one evening, I was walking my dog around my subdivision and smoking as I did most evenings before bed. I walked the same route each night, which unfortunately meant I had to pass by his home. On my way back this night, I saw him, out the corner of my eye, coming out of his house with a baseball bat. He stood in front of my yard for a few minutes, and then I could hear him starting to walk behind me, and I panicked. I was also high, and unsure if I should be alarmed or scared. Was this the time to panic? Some kids in the duplex across the street started banging on the window and making a bunch of noise. I was too scared to even look up at them. My dog started getting agitated, and I decided to start running, since I was only 2 minutes from home, and I figured I could make it inside and lock the door. Alex must have gotten spooked by the noise, so he stopped following me. I'm so very thankful for those kids who knew the situation did not look right, and so they tried to warn me. It worries me. Think about what would have happened if they didn't. For some background, when I was around 16 or 17, I worked at a local Tim Hortons store for some extra cash. Nothing too unordinary, Just a lot of old folks coming to get their coffee and morning office runs. It wasn't until I started covering midnights for people on the weekends that I saw a strange man who started appearing randomly. It started with him picking up money from the drive-through lane, which is by law illegal. He was talked to and stopped picking up the change, but at night, in the drive-through cameras, there was always 2 pinpricks of whitish, greenish lights coming from the garden and whispers in our headsets that none of us would admit to. I always thought it was my coworkers playing tricks on me. I mean, we had a lot of jokesters. The whispers would say things like, "I will skin your bones," and "You'll enjoy your last bagel." I always got a bagel on break, and it made me shiver at the thought that someone was always watching me. But again, it was most likely my coworkers. The man then became bolder. He started ordering weird things like a biscuit not toasted with butter, but then he wanted it to be toasted and soaked in coffee. One night, he came in with blood all over his shirt, and when we asked him if he was okay and if he needed first aid or an ambulance, he just said no, he needed to pee and that he was fine. My supervisor called the police right away as she came in from changing the outside garbages and was bawling her eyes out. She asked me as the phone rang if anyone had come inside, and I said, "Yes, a man. He went into the washroom, but I think he's hurt." She screamed as she realized it wasn't his blood. She told the operator, "I was changing the outside garbages when I saw a man lying on the sidewalk. He wasn't breathing, and I think the killer's in the bathroom." The police department was no longer than 5 minutes away, and they dragged that man out of the washroom. He was completely naked and covered in blood. I threw up, and I felt really, really sick to my stomach. Shortly after this incident, the store was closed, and from what I know, it wasn't an aggravated killing. And even worse, I don't think it ever hit the news. I'm not sure why these things never hit mainstream news, but I feel like it's the company trying to cover it up. Nonetheless, psychotic Tim Hortons creeper, I hope we never meet again.